All right, today is November the 10th, 2025. This is the IPS morning deprogram. And as a default, I have phones open in case you have anything pressing. And if you need to, Discord is also available for voice chat. And we want to use voice chat more often. So if I'm in there, feel free to join in if you have something you want to discuss, because any of our voice chats can just be put into the 24/7 feed. Also, thanks to Armin Ra for sending me some files of podcasts he had done, several episodes, and these are all going into the 24/7 replay archives and best of feed at the Infinite Plane radio channel. So let's go ahead, and the title tonight or today's live stream is why it's pointless to debate settled opinions, why I stopped. Someone had mentioned something about, what do I tell my truther friend who believes that the Epstein thing is real? You know, how do I convince him it's a psyop? And ultimately, it's a burden of proof thing, because you're dealing with people who believe things for a number of reasons, not facts, but rumor, some cognitive bias, something they've already accepted. So they're not really there for analyzing evidence that contradicts it. And when you're dealing with believers, facts don't actually matter to them. And I think we need to be cognizant of the points of view we are addressing and whether or not it's even worth debating, other than for our own interests. I feel like as we look at this more as like anthropology and we're studying from an outsider perspective, maybe we shouldn't be concerned with changing minds, but leaving people and accepting them where they are. And there's nothing wrong with it. These are just different points of view. Some people are religious, some are not. Some people are logical, some are not. Some people believe that the mainstream media provides a window to the world that proffers all kinds of useful information, which might be true, but they're not aware of how often that information is misinformation, or how the purpose of it isn't to inform, but to conform to a prefabricated model. Joined by John Francis, McDirty Work. Yeah, thanks for joining. I think I saw you and some others in DLive. I have a lot of platforms available to me. So as soon as I can upgrade to the business of Restream, we'll be on about 8 channels. Right now, we're on 2 YouTubes and a Twitter. But I would like to expand that. So that's one of the next things on the agenda. And I'm trying to build up to 24 hours of recent content. And I'll go through the archives. I'll find older stuff and phone calls and put it into the mix. We just want to make sure we're not pulling in anything that's going to get us canceled. So is it even useful at all to debate, other than for the point of examining the architecture of their arguments? Because I do believe that straw men are inferior to steel men arguments, that we should be able to deconstruct a steel man, melt a steel man. Anybody can burn a straw man. And if your entire perspective has been rooted based on straw manning the opposition, then you don't know enough about them to really refute them. It's kind of like we live in this world of subjectivity, and I think we need to raise the standards a bit. And that's really what we have done. Because you'll see that the mainstream and the alternative perspectives are part of a duopoly. I describe them as Plato's cave dwellers, where you have the main cave and the alternative cave. And they all have the same starting point. They assume the basic claims of the mainstream are valid, and they build on top of it. They're building on shifting sands. And what we're doing is we're starting our perspective, our take on anything, from the off-world stage perspective, which recognizes short-term and long-term news and history manipulation of our timeline, and therefore our worldview and frame of reference. We're confronting the design authority as represented in Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis. They looked like strangers from Dark City, but these were the black-clad, black-rimmed hats, this Saturnian brotherhood who could control time. Well, that's what we're actually looking at. Time control. The only conspiracy worth talking about because it's real, all the other ones are fake and they're contained within the closed informational system of the mainstream. And they have settled opinions and they assume the supremacy of their perspectives, which is very common with all religions. And mainstream media is a religion where the believers will just presume that they are the authority on the topic. And if you can't refute it to their satisfaction, they feel very comfortable defaulting back to what the mainstream believes. So the mainstream does not have the right or the authority to be the default arbiter of what is true. It shouldn't, not if you've been paying attention for any length of time. The same people who lied about fill in the blank psyop are going to lie about tomorrow's psyop. It's not like we wake up tomorrow and everybody's honest. It's not that it's lying out of malice. It's lying because that's what it's built to do. And by lying, I mean it's creating a worldview. So it's not doing what news is supposed to do if you think news is objective and open to facts, open to revision, but it's not. It's like settled science. It's kind of a contradiction. We're looking at settled opinions, a lot of settled hearsay. So to get back to what my response was when someone said, how do I provide a video to show somebody the Epstein thing is fake? There's not a video, a book, there's not a list of facts you could provide because you're living in a world of subjectivity where facts have to be rooted in objective reality to even matter. Well, facts don't matter on the world stage. Feelings matter. Thumbs up, engagement, virility, popularity, ad populum. That's really what matters on the world stage. It's a consensus opinion thing. American Father says, as the book says, I choose to look at the evidence and become a knower. Yeah, and I appreciate your reviews on the book. The purpose of the book is to consolidate these ideas and show that we indeed have a separate framework from the duopoly. But what you're referencing is the fundamental difference. We have, whether you're mainstream or alt, you're in a closed system of misinformation, but you believe stuff. And when you believe something, you have no reason to continue to investigate. So these beliefs are what I'm suggesting are ones that have been handed to you by broadcast media in some way that you have no direct way of reality testing it. So it's tantamount to, I have faith in Fox. I have faith in CNN. And I'm saying, no, we should reject faith because it's their job to prove it's true. If they can't, you're under no obligation to do so. So instead of becoming a believer, you can remain a seeker and take the stance of the informed disbeliever. And if you were to put low information belief or faith-based belief on one side of the scale and informed disbelief on the other, guess which one's going to weigh more? The informed disbelief, because it consists of more information. Low information belief, high information disbelief. And the reason for the disbelief is the additional information contradicts the central claim. So we're not saying things are fake out of ignorance. We certainly do not say everything is fake. And I get accused of that every once in a while. Someone says, you go too far when you say sports might be manipulated. You can't just say everything's fake. It's like, I've never said everything's fake. I've consistently made the point that a small percentage of news is fake. Good liars don't lie with every breath. That's a bad liar. That's somebody nobody could trust. A good liar gains your trust. They lie strategically for advantage when they know they can get away with it. Media is a good liar. But the fact is, the fake events, the simulated events that are planned long in advance, these are the ones we're talking about, the psychological operations. These are tantamount to lies, and these are strategically placed. And they are not the majority of all news reportage. The fake stuff could only be 3% or even 1%. But it's the fake stuff that grabs the headlines, that all the opinion pieces and talk shows bounce off of. The fake stuff permeates the entire media ecosystem, and it dominates it. It is given the spotlight. So we don't even have to say everything is fake. But even the stuff that isn't fake, like when they report that the sky is blue, the reporter is standing on top of an edifice of fakery. a worldview built upon known and well-documented and exposed lies. Angst G says only deliberate frauds or severely programmed individuals are offended by skepticism. Yes. And another point too that I think is important to clarify is that the mainstream worldview doesn't really investigate our claims. They reject it. They say, oh, you need to touch grass. You're crazy. Put on a tinfoil hat. And you hear this from conspiracy theorists, which is ironic. Mainstream says, oh, this subset of people are all tinfoil hatters. Well, the tinfoil hatters are calling us crazy. But they're calling us crazy because the things that we say are outside of their box. They don't have the information we do to share our conclusions or even to deconstruct them. Instead, they become incredulous, which some mistake for skepticism. Our perspective is inherently skeptical. Skepticism means you don't judge with low information. You wait until you have high information and then you judge. So we're talking about suspension of judgment until we get more data. We want to know as much about the proposition we disagree with so we can effectively get rid of it. On the other hand, the mainstream approach, the mainstream approach is to not look at the other information, to call it crazy, throw an ad hominem, shoot the messenger, and ignore what they have to say. So their perspective is willfully ignorant, especially when you explain many times in a row that we're not calling everything fake. We're talking about strategic propaganda lies. So now let me get to something else too. I got a couple of comments back to back, and this is what I think agents look like. So think about how small this channel is. David John Rivington McDonough says hello with a question mark, which is kind of interesting. Normally you say hello. So this is more of a hello. Like, I guess asking if we're live. I don't understand your inflection, but hello. So this is a relatively small channel. And what are the odds that a plane crash in Kentucky that made national news would have multiple listeners directly connected to it? So listen to this. I had two back-to-back comments. They were both on the same day. I presume these people don't know each other, but listen to this and tell me what you think. Are we dealing with liars or agents? So one commenter says, I live 29 miles from that airport. I have a nephew who works for the UPS. So there's two people being referenced. Both the husband and the son of one of my clients works there also. The son was in the mechanic shop 50 feet from the crash where it happened and is shaken up over it. So now we have four people who have been brought into the picture as witnesses or directly connected to it. And one of them was 50 feet away from the airplane. Like, what are the odds? Like, I remember watching this truck attack psyop in Nice, and there's like rubber dummies dumped on the ground and a blurry cell phone guy running around recording it. And some guy's like, how dare you say this is fake? That's my girlfriend on the ground. Like, your girlfriend is that rubber crash test dummy? What are you doing on a YouTube channel with 33 live viewers instead of sitting at the hospital bed beside your dying girlfriend? Like, take a picture of her to convince us. And that's when I realized a lot of these people in the cult of mainstream media will lie. Self-appointed T cells, like they're the immune system of the beast media. And they're like, I must defend mainstream lies at all costs. And I call these people out as media advocates. Like, how dare you call it fake? I'm like, why are you a media advocate? What's your evidence? You're just citing what you saw on TV? And like, I'm not a media advocate. Well, then whose advocate are you? What is your perspective? And I'm just bringing up the point that the mainstream perspective is the default, and people assume it's the same thing as objective. By the way, the plane apparently clipped some telephone poles, very 9/11-y. How many flights have been grounded? Thousands and thousands of flights have been grounded. This whole event, on time of the plane crash, has had 9/11 written all over it, from Dick Cheney's death, Muslim mayor, car blowing up in the Bronx, injuring 5 firemen. Somebody got some white powder sent to them. The shenanigans of the airlines shutting down. Not to mention the got a caller.
Hey, I'll make this real quick, because what you're really trying to distinguish here is between outright agents or conscious operatives versus useful idiots, people that pawns, people that are being manipulated. When we first, back around 2005, when people really started digging into the media fakery around 9/11, there was a guy with a lot of money named Jimmy Wales, I think. There's a guy with a lot of money who financed people that were researching the TV fakery. This is just before September Clues was released, maybe about a year or two later.
Okay.
But people were catching on to the central role of the media in 9/11. And we were desperate to get out. Everybody, of course, listened to Alex Jones. Alex Jones was the only, let me tell you something, there were only 2 places you could go to listen to radio where people were talking about, 9/11 being an inside job. And one of those was Alex Jones on GCN, Genesis Communication Network, owned by, I guess, Ted Anderson, who was a silver dealer.
Yes, I remember him.
The other one was RBN, Republic Broadcasting Network, run by John. He's dead now. Oh, man, I'm having a senior moment, but I'll get back. I'll remember his name. But that was it. There was a guy named Aronowitz over in England or something who started a station to talk about, 9/11 being controlled demolitions, and then he kind of got shut down. They shut him down. But we were desperate to get Alex Jones to look at that ridiculous image of Flight 175 disappearing into the steel rebar reinforced concrete of South Tower, like
Alex Jones, the guy who was shirtless and pantless with Russell Brand on his back doing push-ups yesterday. Okay, that guy.
Hey, let's not even. Let's assume that's it. Let's assume that's now an Alex Jones replacement or impersonator. Jake the Awake thinks so. I don't know, but I just want to really pinpoint this. We started calling up Alex Jones during his show, and you wouldn't believe what he did to sabotage us. He said, "You're ridiculous." He said, "I've worked in the media for 30 years, and that's not media. People could never do something like that." Well, it makes me so angry to remember. And then he just started hanging up and shutting people down whenever they wanted to talk about the media fakery.
Right, that's right. So when he was like the sole gatekeeper, and he slammed the door. He was definitely gatekeeping at that time. Very hardcore.
We had another term for that. We called it bodyguarding the media.
Ooh, nice.
That's what they're bodyguarding the media. They want to say, "Oh no, the media. If the media got it wrong, it's because they were fooled too." You know what I mean?
Yes.
Something like that. Oh,
yes.
The media was fooled too. They didn't know. But we couldn't even get him. We said, "Just look at it," and no, he wouldn't. It was so frustrating because we thought, "What the hell's going on here?" We've got obvious evidence that the media was involved in the 9/11 psyop, up to the degree of broadcasting cartoons, digital cartoons, over TV news. And we got him doing it with the Hezarkhani clip, with the ABC Peter Jennings Fairbanks clip, several ridiculous clips that showed this Boeing jet just smoothly, noiselessly, like, look, Ma, no impact, just disappearing into the facade of the South Tower. And when you slowed it down, you could see that. And anybody who knows anything about what an aluminum basket, which is all a Boeing commercial jet is, it's not like it's a DU hardened missile.
But he wouldn't even platform anything.
He wouldn't even say, "Well, I don't know." Maybe he wouldn't wouldn't even dance around it. He wouldn't even dance around it. And then the other one I want to move on to, who I think is maybe a different. So I am designating Alex Jones as he was deployed. He said, "What do I say about this?" He turned to somebody and said, "What do I say?" Asked him, "What do I say when they call up and want to talk about this?" And they gave him his line, and he read his line from the script. He's a low-life, despicable scum.
Well, they all are. They all are. They all are. But what do you think about? But what do you think about this
protecting the media? And the other one I want to talk about for a second.
But what do you think about this person jumping into my YouTube comments saying, "I know 3 people directly connected to that"?
Ask them to supply. Hey, we can be polite. Ask them to supply names and details, and we'll check it out.
Well, I know they don't.
Should be eager to listen. They should be eager to do that if they want us to prove them right.
See, I noticed this phenomenon to be very common, to where I kind of think that what we're looking at are people who feel like they have the moral obligation to defend it.
Yeah, of course, because they say, "Oh no, the media could never do something like that." But here was Alex Jones saying, "Take it from me. I'm an insider in media." And then I come to Warner Brothers at some point owned. I've seen this clip of somebody who was working for Alex Jones confronting a sheriff or a cop, and then pulling his corporate identification and saying it's Warner Brothers. So does that mean that Warner Brothers owned Alex Jones at one time? The other one before I go, who I want to talk about is David Icke.
Yeah, David Icke is. I mean, unfortunately for him,
you've recently gotten into like David Icke has now reappeared.
Yeah, he's suddenly been made more acceptable now that Candace Owens has opened the Overton window to include the idea that Peter Thiel, Sam Altman, and Elon Musk are cyborgs that don't bleed.
Well, they might as well be. I consider them less than human, but yeah, they don't. I doubt that they're it doesn't matter. Everybody wants to kind of make this supernatural, esoteric, otherworldly, and it's really pretty mundane. Because Alex Jones could be the person living next door to you. The difference is he was in that position, and that was his assignment, to shut us down. And that's what he did. And I'll bet to this day, if you said, "Hey, the media really broadcast fake bullshit about a fictional," there was no Flight 175, there were no box cutter hijackings, there were no crashing planes, except what you saw on TV. He would continue to defend that. Or here would be his fallback position. If we put it out there and said, "Look, this is fake, this is a cartoon," he would say, "Oh, well, that's what the media was handed, and they were fooled." He's about defending the media.
Okay, that's the point.
I want to talk about David.
Okay, well, the defending the media thing, because this is the premise here, is that when they call us hoaxers, they're suggesting that we're calling things hoaxes, and that the media just shows up with their cameras, shows up with their microphones to interview people and record what's going on and tell us. So the media is always presumed innocent and objective. And the main paradigm shift that we're offering here is that the media is not witnessing this stuff as we are and telling us what's going on, but they're producing it. And that's what he's hiding.
I hate to shoot down your paradigm shift. But all we're doing is arriving at the same place that average citizens in the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc, before the fall of the Berlin Wall, that they arrived at. In other words, they didn't have as many we had 3, then 4 stations.
Well, they had underground literature, which they used.
Samizdat,
exactly. And that's kind of what we're doing. That's
the thing I'm saying is, when they turned on the television or the radio, they knew they were being lied to, and it was just a part of everyday life to them. There's nothing particularly brilliant about us saying, "Oh my God, the media isn't objective. They're not a fourth estate. They're actually controlled by these." There's nothing particularly original or brilliant about that. But the one who you see really falling for it would be David Icke. Because at the moment of truth for me with David Icke it was only a couple of years ago. It wasn't that long ago, maybe 2 years ago. David Icke it might have been Sam Tripoli that invited David Icke to come on, and he had Eddie Bravo there with him. I think I've told you this story. It's got to be out. This clip is almost impossible to find. But basically, David Icke was taking questions about and explaining, going on, talking about stuff. And then Eddie Bravo said, "So, David, what do you think about the NASA and the Apollo 11 moon landings?" And Icke, he froze. And then he said, "Well, I haven't really looked into that."
Yeah,
And
I
boy, did they move on. Boy, did they move on from that. And I thought to myself, well, this is a guy, this David Icke is telling us he's got the secret. He's got the key.
no, but there's a really specific reason why you can't. David Icke's entire paradigm is based on space aliens that came down here and created man. And so he can't go into that area because his whole paradigm is also new age, cosmic consciousness. And I think his role is he comes in to Trutherville to cater to the non-Christians with like a new age simulation theory bent, whereas Alex Jones can actually pander to the Christian conservatives, Christian nationalism. So
It's
Ike
a
is,
multi-level marketing thing.
yeah,
He
has the,
and I both marketed each other.
yeah,
They marketed.
they have the same red pill perspective, but one of them is traditional religion and the other one is non-mainstream
Well,
new
here's what
age.
I'm saying. Unless and until you apologize to your audience, thousands, maybe millions, who've been following you for the last 30. How long has David Icke been out there? I mean, 20, 30 years. He's been out there a long time. Unless you turn and make a sincere apology to your followers for your neglect in failing to even take a second look at NASA's space hoax.
Well, I don't think these guys are actually. He's not. They're not investigators.
I'm going to outright call Alex Jones.
Well, nobody here, nobody at the IPS think tank is under the illusion that these guys are investigating and just not coming to the right conclusions. We know that they are there to maintain establishment guardrails. That's their purpose.
Right, and I'm just trying to say before I go, don't think, nobody out there should think, guys, don't think any of us are special because we see through this. Because as I say, the average Soviet citizen knew, he didn't believe a word he heard over the radio or the TV networks that were run by the Soviet state. All that's happening is that we're arriving at that stage of development and understanding. People say, oh, it's an apocalypse, the lifting of the veil, the apocalypse. We're lifting people are the slaves who are chained to the wall of the cave have been liberated. No. This has been there, done that. Been there, done that. And what we should be studying and looking at is the fall of the Soviet Union. The fall of how that went down.
Well, I see what you're saying. What I point out too, though, like, no, we are a small minority. I'm saying there's no point to debating the people in Plato's cave in the duopoly. If you're mainstream or alternative, you're not capable of adopting our perspective.
I think there's a point to humiliating them and ridiculing them, of course.
I think you should accept people's religions.
Are you saying we should just ignore them?
I think we should ignore them because we don't have the time and resources and energy.
They're not marginal enough. When they've been thoroughly discredited, then you say, we can ignore these people. We may have arrived at that with Charlie Kirk because everywhere I go on social media, people are, they're all rejecting the official Charlie Kirk narrative.
Look, my relatives are. They have different opinions.
And the idea that he might still be alive, that's not so far-fetched.
But here's the problem with that. Even if somebody can come to the conclusion that he's still alive, if they don't grasp the context in which the fakery takes place, the fact gets submerged in the sea of irrelevance. And that's what I'm trying to do here is explain that facts don't matter in the subjective world stage universe. We need to get outside of that.
Then they're ignoring common sense and simple reasoning. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. I mean, somebody loves to be fooled. These people out there, they have embraced. It's ideological.
Hey, yes.
They don't give a damn what the facts are, what the truth are.
They
have embraced an ideology, and that is driving everything they say. And a lot of them don't even, like Candace Owens. Candace Owens produced, I understand, a fairly successful documentary about the George Floyd Derek Chauvin event. That was more, and I think she's contractually obligated to the Daily Wire because they were the ones. She produced it when she was still working for them.
She's probably still working for Ben Shapiro, doing the controlled opposition, woke right thing to help make him look good. I don't think these people are separate.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Let me go and leave, and let's get other people to call.
Okay, well, we're going to use your term, media bodyguarding. That's an important concept.
Absolutely, bodyguarding the media. That's what they're doing. They're bodyguarding the media. They're saying, oh, no, I'm standing in front of them and protecting them and telling you have to go through me, and I'm one of these people. This is what Jones would say. at that first couple times that people called up to talk about the TV faker, he got real annoyed. And then he would say, that's ridiculous. He said, I've worked in media that was his argument. I've worked in media for decades.
Yes.
And there's no way they would be that.
So
they could,
we must call out.
They could get away with that. There's no way. And when people continued to call and bring it up, he would just shut him. He'd just hang up on them.
We got to call out the media bodyguards as such, make them own that title.
And he did that. The other one who did that, I think, was Jack Blood. His name was. That's not his real name. There were only a handful. There were only a handful of broadcasters that were even talking about 9/11. It's almost like they steered us. They funneled us
Successfully, yes.
Into GCN and RBN, because I'm telling you, there was no place else to go.
Exactly.
And we couldn't believe that Jones was doing that. He was going to protect the media like this, but he just shut us down. And that, I'm telling you, and that's already back in 2005.
Yes, ancient history, but it's revealing. It's revealing.
Right. But I agree with Jake. For all we know, they could have replaced Alex Jones with a digital synth or a rubber, or a fax suit. Who cares? Why is anybody? Now should we ignore the people that are?
Here's my point. When we talk about these people that I'm saying, is there a purpose to debating them if they have settled opinions?
No, we shouldn't be wasting.
What we should be doing is studying them.
Cut to the chase.
Study them.
There's self-evident truth. Hey, look, what is self-evident truth? We're standing looking at the sky on a sunny day, and I say the sky's blue, the clouds are either white or gray. That's we don't need to argue about that. Now you might come back and say, well, yeah, but come here at sundown and you'll see shades of purple and magenta and red and brown. I said, yeah, but right now at this moment, the sky's blue and the clouds are either white or gray. That's not a debatable or arguable point. Some ideas are, to a greater or lesser extent, arguable or debatable. Others are self-evident, what we call self-evident. I know a controlled demolition when I see one. That's self-evident.
Is it self-evident to you that the entertainment media creates content that is coordinated in its release to essentially I think add substance to, but mirroring psyops real time.
Scripted.
Yeah.
And the only argument that should exist among us is we know who's producing and propagating the script. Those are the ones in uniform and silk suits that appear on camera and say, we're your government, and we're telling you this is true. We know you could refuse to believe it if it were just the media reporting it. But we're putting the imprimatur of government upon it. And not only that, we're demanding new laws. We're demanding total surveillance. We're demanding police state measures because of this. See, that's completely different than just the media propagating.
But is predictive programming self-evident to you?
No, I've never.
See, I disagree. I can prove it exists.
Well, it doesn't matter if it does. All you're saying.
But it exists in a way that.
It's called Kulturkampf. That's the German word. Culture war, culture struggle.
But it's
always been with us.
It has been, yes.
What they want to manifest. I think I mentioned that movie, 3 Days to the Condor.
Think of it like product placement for ideas, for situations, for events, for history.
Yeah,
as they
but
make
these
it.
are they're pulling out of a pile of old scripts.
No. You can't use that argument anymore because they're doing it real time. So if you have a real time.
Well, yeah, but so what? You don't know what they're doing.
No,
or not.
I can tell you what I can tell you.
No,
I can tell you. I can tell you unequivocally what it means. If something comes out on Netflix,
now what you want
no, I can tell you right now. If it comes out on Netflix today, and then it happens in the news today, then what happened to the news necessarily would have been planned in advance.
Not true about it. It's a government operation. It's a government military psyop. I gotta go.
All right. Have a great day. Yeah, predictive programming is self-evident. Concurrent programming has ruled out the idea that they're cherry-picking content or getting stuff out of culture and putting it into the psyops. No, the psyop precedes the culture creation. So when it comes to predictive programming, even concurrent, because everything released concurrently would have been produced in advance. But this content comes after the PSYOP script. For every fake event that you can name, and this is every single one, the PSYOP script will have preceded the creation of the corresponding PSYOP content. That is a truism. All right, let me go ahead and get to some more comments. Okay, so here's what we were talking about. She called in about media bodyguards. So media bodyguards, people who, what I call media advocates, who take the default position of the mainstream and argue against anything that would be inclusive of media manipulation at the scale that we consistently describe here, as it self-evidently exists. So someone had said, because we're talking about flight 2976, and someone had said, I live 29 miles away from the airport, and I have a nephew who works for the UPS. Both the husband and son of one of my clients works there also. The son was in a mechanic shop 50 feet from the crash when it happened. So this person lives nearby. Their nephew works there. The husband and son of a client works there. And one of them was a direct witness. So this person in my comment section refers to 4 people directly connected to the PSYOP. So I'm wondering, what are the odds that I'm talking about something like this and I'm going to have 4 people 1 degree separated? So then 5 minutes later, another commenter comes in and he says, and this is a typical thing I'll get, he says, have a buddy who filmed the crash from his airplane waiting to take off. Now, I noticed that when people on Twitter lie about an anecdote, they won't say, I know this. They'll say, have a buddy, went to the store. They won't throw the I in there. I noticed this is kind of a thing that confabulators do. So this confabulator says, have a buddy who filmed the crash from his airplane waiting to take off. Plane was not that high when it crashed. Who knows if 9 people died and 11 got hurt? They just make up numbers nobody knows. So he's suggesting it's real and all the number stuff was made up afterward, which makes 0 sense when you consider the wider context of the plane crashing after Cheney dies on 11/3. I mean, the whole thing is just super coded. So anyway, so we have the buddy. So here we have in the small channel, I'm talking about the hoax indicators for the UPS flight, and we have direct access, 1 degree separated, from 5 different people who can vouch for the veracity of the mainstream. So these 5 people have these 2 commenters have come in here to say, no, actually, it's all real. You can trust the news. Ignore the coincidences. On what authority? On your hearsay? On hearsay? On say? On rumor? And we used to get this all the time. I know somebody whose best friend had a dog walker, and the dog walker's original owner, who died, was married to a woman whose best friend was pretty close to someone, had an ex who worked at 9/11 and was a victim. I'm like, okay, you're 20 degrees separated from a victim, and you're going to come advocate for the media? Oh, here's my evidence the media is not lying. My buddy's best friend's buddy has an ex-buddy whose buddy's buddy was there at the event. I'm like, okay, fine. This argument from my buddy is not valid. I want to know what you saw. And if your buddy is such a buddy, your buddy should supply photos. Like my buddy just sent me this picture of the exploding plane, not my buddy saw it. Everybody's got a phone. Michael Johnson's, I'll send you the vid. Yeah, send me the vid. Okay, your buddy sent you a video. Send me the video. That would be great. We have the commenter here. Send us the video. Go send it to infiniteplanesociety@gmail.com. And then we'll go from there. I'm just saying it's a little strange that you have a major psyop, and I often have people who are like there when it happened to tell me, oh, you have nothing to see here. But yes, I'll go ahead and trust me, I'm an auto hoaxer. Well, the event itself is demonstrably a hoax. So if it was a real plane, I mean, first of all, it happened in the context of a simulation drill. They had the drill, 150 mass casualty preceding the event. The coordination of the event with the mayoral race, with Dick Cheney, and the 9/11 code all over it. There's quite a lot of hoax indicators that you'd have to address, in addition to the grounded flights, the white powder. All these 9/11 callbacks that we've been inundated with are undeniably suggestive of a fake event. Now, did your friend see the pyrotechnics show? The 9/11 themed Viking send off for the architect of 9/11? Did he watch the cremation of Dick Cheney's corpse? Possibly. It's possible. I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. But if your buddy has a video, has it gone onto Twitter and gone viral? If anybody recorded that thing, their video would have been seen by the millions. Because I've seen all the available footage so far on Wikipedia, the profile shot that looks very Pentagon-y, by the way, except there's a plane. The same angle as the thing that hit the Pentagon. But I'm just saying, you shouldn't have to email it to me. You should be able to post a Twitter link to your buddy's video of this globally famous PSYOP plane crash that everybody's talking about. Like, where's the video? Or is your buddy keeping it to himself? And then why would he share it with you? So I could share it online. Because if it's real, I will upload it. And I'll say, one of my subscribers' buddy is an eyewitness to this event. So yeah, no arguments from my buddy. Now, what about the other person who is near the airport and her husband's son's clients work there, and her husband's son was working 50 feet away from it? So we got somebody 50 feet from ground zero. Unbelievable. All right, so to get to the point, and the caller reiterated this here, is that the default position is the mainstream media is objective and they're just witnesses. And that is a major point. I'm glad that that caller brought that up, the fact that we're supposed to believe that the media is being fooled. Like the media got tricked by these crisis actors and the fake bodies. That's not how it works. The media produced the event. Because 100% of the time, you know, the media, you know, we have full spectrum coverage of everything happening. So it's always watching. And so we're supposed to think that like, that's all they're doing. But I would say 95% of the time, that's what they're doing. They're covering events. The 5%, they're manufacturing it. So, I mean, how do you think our history is being fabricated? They write the script for future events. We have every indicator that these events are planned decades in advance. That's the big conspiracy that people want to hide from. The people who don't want to acknowledge predictive programming are likely frightened of going deeper because what it reveals that our history is planned in advance and it's performed by the media. The 5% of the time they're lying or fabricating events, it is performance art. Let's perform this event and it will go down in history as real. Cope says, even if he does supply a video, it doesn't disprove the closed set. Yeah, the thing is, there's no reason to think they didn't like literally crash a plane. They had every ability to do so. But I haven't ruled out, I mean, it depends, because you got to look, there's like multiple views of smoke, plumes of smoke. Does it mean it's real? Not necessarily. But to say the whole thing is CGI, I think is a tall claim, just given to how many people around the area could have seen it. So did he see the dummy plane crashing is the question. Now, he also disputed something here. So his buddy said, he said plane was definitely not that high when it crashed. So did you see the video? I'm assuming the person saw his buddy's video and said the plane was not that high when it crashed. Well, according to the reported flight data, it was 175 feet. But I'd like to see the video, and I'd be very curious if somebody recorded it showing that it did not go 175 feet. And then I'd be curious if they didn't put it online. Like if I saw that, I'm like, wait a minute, my buddy's video shows the plane crash and it only went up 33 feet. Like that's noteworthy. I bet the media's lying. Why are they lying about this? But we'll see. I'm just saying the video should be on Twitter. It should be on X. We can't cite video you don't actually have. And that's essentially what you're doing. Based on the authority of this content, we can reasonably conclude this event happened. Well, where's the content? It's on my buddy's phone. I mean, how many actual videos do we have? And another point too, because we've been looking at these various videos, except for this mystery video that we're waiting for. And any one of these could have been produced during the drill. I mean, the various angles. So we don't actually know for sure. Now, during the drill, they were burning some stuff, but it wasn't some huge, magnificent explosion like they did on that day. But looking at it as an anomaly in isolation, like, oh, a plane crash in isolation, yeah, that's not really that challenging to accept as real. The only reason we looked at it closer, and I've got 510,000 hits on my Twitter, my X. What do you call these things now? Tweets, X's. My X post has more than 500,000 impressions, where I was pointing out the correlations between the event and 9/11. And I pointed it out day one. Since then, the 9/11 references have piled up, from Cheney to the new mayor, to the fireman being injured, to the Muslim terrorist named for the same airport, Muhammad Ali Airport. Like the whole thing is so obviously scripted. Or the universe has a tremendous sense of irony and humor that the day Dick Cheney dies, a plane crashes and a Muslim takes over New York, and the Muslims reputed by the right to be, I mean, they say that he's a terrorist or a socialist or something, because I think these things are interchangeable to them. But we have to challenge the media advocates. And I like the term media bodyguards, because you have to put them in this position of like, well, why are you defending Fox News and CNN? If you're not media, you're not paid. Why are you defending it? What makes you want to defend it? And when you put people on the spot, I think it's helpful because they may not be aware of what they're doing. And I say media advocate because I used to get callers who would say, well, I've heard all your points suggesting this thing is staged, but can you just be open-minded? Let me just be devil's advocate. Can we be open-minded to maybe the mainstream is telling the truth? I'm like, well, first of all, we're the devil's advocate because the media has the authority, the stamp of approval. They are true, according to everybody. We're the ones going against the grain. We are the devil's advocate. So you would be the media advocate. And second, you cannot claim to be open-minded if your perspective is guardrailed by mainstream presuppositions and narrative frameworks. That's not open-minded. So you're like, I see these coincidences. I only have two possible answers: simulation theory or coincidence. If you only have two options, you're not open-minded. We bring about a third option, which begins with, I don't know. Let's consider additional facts. And the third option is, well, maybe it's not the simulation because that's fake. Maybe it's not coincidence because this is coming from a media infrastructure known for fabricating events, and this is a standard template style of event. So maybe it's intentional. But in their universe, in the fictional mainstream universe, they don't have a framework in which they can include the possibility of intentionality when it comes to coordinated occurrences. They can't figure it out. Even people, if you're stuck in the MSM box, you think predictive programming is a conspiracy theory, just a bunch of coincidences we're making too much out of. It cannot enter into your mind, if you are MSM plus or MSM, It cannot enter your mind, because your mind is guardrailed, that historical events are planned in advance. Now, some truthers will say, okay, 9/11 was planned in advance because look at all the predictive stuff. But what they fail to grasp is that it's a fake event planned in advance. Rick Capuchin says coincidence isn't an option. Yeah, the thing is, coincidence is the default. The mainstream is its default. So when someone comes to us and they say, can you be open-minded and just be considerate of the mainstream default option? I'm like, what do you mean? Open-minded and go with the program? Just be open-minded and go with the program. Be open-minded and don't deviate from what Big Brother has reported. Stop peeking behind the curtain. So like, yeah, you're bodyguarding the media. Why? Like, I respect crisis actors as far as I respect the hustle, the grind, they're getting the gigs, they're getting paid. They're getting paid to lie for the media and to defend mainstream lies. But what's your excuse? If you're not getting paid to bodyguard for the MSM, lie on their behalf, reinforce the efficacy of their psychological warfare ops, then why are you doing it? Oh, you're just a volunteer mind effer? Just going to go around messing with people's minds because you think it's like a moral obligation? Because it's actually not. The mainstream perspective does not have a moral high ground. It's built on lies, mendacity, deception, I would say covert coercion, psychological and emotional manipulation, and endless lies. So how can you defend that? And it's ironic that the truthers are the ones who defend that stuff. Useless term. Dark Ghost Wind says the plane was 34 years old. What does that refer to? So one more point. I've seen other people using this term and I like it. Michael Jones says, okay, I got the vid. Turns out it's the same one that's on Twitter. Oh, I see. Yeah, the one on Twitter, though, it doesn't show the full flight because I don't think people got it until they saw it going low. I don't think anyone was just randomly recording it. I don't think it went 175 in any of the videos. The reason I have that number is that it became a number on Wiki. And I said, well, flight 175 was the second plane that hit the tower, the second tower. So I saw a couple channels using the word duopoly, and I'm very happy about this. I'm not saying I started it, but this is a very important word to use because mainstream and alternative are in fact a duopoly. And that is the Plato's Cave. And no, it doesn't take any great deal of insight to call things fake. But what we're doing is a paradigm shift. Because what we're doing is we're putting things into context that no one else has yet. You realize that nobody in Trutherville has figured out what predictive programming is. Not one. They all still think that it's wizards or simulations or video games, or they can't even confront it. I encountered many of these. The bigger the channel, the harder a time they have with this because they're attached to the program. They can't even confront it. And I don't think it's that they're paid not to, because that would presume they knew there was something to it. And I think it's a big secret. I think we're just looking at indoctrination and alternative indoctrination. Worst Nightmare says the forest of fakery. Yes. See, let me draw the forest of fakery for you. So if you're not familiar with it, there's actually a book, a short ebook that I have on Kindle called The Forest of Fakery. Okay, so this is the forest of fakery. And every one of these, and I can draw better than this. I think you all know that, but these are the trees. So you have truthers walking through the forest of fakery. And you have a big truther with a big mouth and a big megaphone. And he points at one tree and he says, this tree is fake. We'll call this one 9/11. And then he points out this tree is fake. We'll call this one Sandy. And then we'll call this one fake. And we'll call this one C-19. So these truthers follow the megaphones around the big designated fake trees for decades. So for decades, people walk around these fake trees and they keep shouting and nobody else believes them. Everybody else in the world is just content and happy. And they see these people running circles around these events. And like, well, they're crazy because they keep calling these things fake, but they keep on getting louder about it. These trees are fake. These trees are fake. We are truthers. Now, what they miss is that as long as you're following the megaphones and you're not testing every tree, what they miss is all the trees are fake. They're in a forest of fakery, but they don't see the forest because they're distracted by the designated fake trees, missing the forest for the trees. They're not seeing the big picture. So the big picture is whenever you look at an event like the Charlie Kirk thing, it's not the Charlie Kirk thing. It's the Charlie Kirk thing in the context of every fake event that came before, like the girl in the subway. I think you could include Butler, Pennsylvania. You could include a number of events and situations that are relevant to the universe of Charlie Kirk and all the January 6th, all those actors, all the pundits around it. So you have to look at the big picture. They exist in a system of fakery, systemic fakery. So the fake things aren't anomalies. Like every few hundred events is every 200 events there's going to be a fake one. No, that's not how it is. No. And I'm not saying everything's real, but if everybody's focusing on it, if it's suspiciously similar to previous events, yeah, it's certainly worth looking at in the context of it's probably fake until proven real. So 9/11 is ancient history. Sandy Hook is ancient history. There's 30 other mass shootings we should be looking at. And we should be looking at the commonalities. And one of the commonalities, and this is one of the other things as well, because there was a drill before the UPS crash, and I think this is relevant. So you have the predictive content, predictive programming, foreshadowing, and that's the stuff that leads up to the event. Then you have the real-time stuff, the concurrent, and the concurrent stuff is undeniable. This proves predictive programming is real, and the concurrent stuff that comes out at the exact same time as the event means the event was planned in advance, because it takes time to produce a movie scheduled on Netflix. So you have these two categories of content flooding the media ecosystem, the stuff that came before and the stuff that happens at the same time. Again, the stuff that happens at the same time is damning for anybody who still holds on to the illusion that these are just coincidences. Erica Kirk has debunked that for us. But even if you choose to ignore this stuff out of just belligerent ignorance, there's still drills. Why are all the major psyops happening during drills? Like when the flight AA something hit the Black Hawk helicopter, I was like, well, if it's fake, we're going to see indicators. There's going to be an immediately implementable political agenda. It's going to be bifurcated in its response, which it was. Right wing blamed DEI, left wing blamed Elon Musk and Donald Trump and Doge and government cuts. So we saw hallmarks of fakery, but then we had this drills happening at the same time. Now, this happens every time. This happens so often that it's as prevalent as predictive and concurrent programming. So you can say, well, these are just coincidences. The movie industry has nothing to do with hyping up psyops. No, Hollywood directors would never be so corrupt as to platform government propaganda. Okay, you can believe that if you want. You can rule it out as coincidence, but the drills also indicate that the event is pre-planned. And if it's pre-planned, it's fake. Pre-planned equals fake. Joined by Thirst for Truth, They Lie We See. Bird's Nest Rat Fest says, who created it, what for, which type of beings exist within it, what's our duty? Well, it's an extension of, it's a new iteration of religion. So we have a one world religion, whether you like it or not. We have a one world governance, whether you like it or not. And it's been largely accomplished through the synchronization of worldview, which you could call worldview warfare. It's not something that's coming. It's not something that you can protect yourself with an AR-15. Not something you can defend against because it's already here. We're already living in it. You were born into the matrix, born into the bondage. And the only way out of this Truman Show, of this matrix, the only way out of this closed informational system is to adopt a perspective that is outside of it. Inside your perspective is the same as Wikipedia. If your opinions agree with Wikipedia, like, hey, I heard your coincidences about that plane crash, but I went to Wikipedia and it didn't say anything about all this. It just basically said it's real, so it's real. Okay, well, if your opinion echoes Wikipedia, your perspective is mainstream mediated. So this is MSM. When I say MSM, I don't mean mainstream media in a very limited sense. I mean mainstream mediation. What's hitting the multitudes, the billions. That's your perspective. If you think that it was maybe real, but I don't know, the deep state did it, then you're just a conspiracy theorist. You're in a subset. You haven't rejected the premise that the thing actually happened. Like, oh, I think it happened, but they lied about the numbers on there. Like, no, that's still in that closed system. So the only way out of this propaganda matrix is to recognize it for what it is. It's not just the media's lying. It's that the worldview that we get is based on the consensus agreement on what happened yesterday, what happened last week, what happened last month. In other words, fake news is history. Or real news distorted by fake news. Our distorted worldview is the result of media distortion. Or you could say worldview curation. So the mainstream worldview is non-objective. It's subjective. It's a subjective interpretation, and it's been interpreted for you. And it rests upon every fake event, every bent news cycle, all these lies, staged events that create our false history. That is your world stage perspective. So you're co-signing this. When you say, I'm going to trust the mainstream news on this, not you tinfoil hatters. Well, you just co-signed on a century of lies and fake news and propaganda. You're like, yeah, I'm standing upon a big pile of crap, but I'm comfortable here. This is my stance. Okay, fine. That's your perspective. That's why I say it's pointless to debate them, because they don't even know what they're defending by even taking their stance. By opposing us, by opposing what we're talking about, I'm not talking about debating it, but by just ignoring it or even trying to oppose it by lying or fabricating, fibbing in order to somehow make it seem like the news isn't lying. If you're in opposition to us, where are you actually standing? Are you one of the good guys? Well, no, you're actually a media advocate again. So the only way out of it, though, is to recognize timeline distortion, or you could call it history bending, the result of news bending, because news becomes history. So if you don't recognize the long-term effects of news bending, if you don't have history bending in your vocabulary, you're not going to see the world stage for what it is. Once you see it, then you take the subtractive view, MSM minus. So we all exist in the same world, but ours subtracts a lot of the erroneous conclusions reached by Wikipedia, ChatGPT, and mainstream sources. So we have a lot of questions. We have a lot of known unknowns, but we have a fundamentally objective standpoint. It is objectively true that psychological operations become part of our consensus history and consensus worldview. It is objectively true that the mainstream entertainment platforms are all used to reinforce the psyops, which become the fake events. It's all about manipulating belief. They Lie We See has the world's leading skeptic responded to the question at which point news becomes history. I would be interested to know, because John LeBon has written extensively and spoken extensively about fake history. So he's comfortable talking about fake history, but way back here, what about yesterday's fake history? What about last week's? Now, we might just be debating about the mechanism of how it's faked, because it's easy to say they faked it after the fact. They had a monopoly, they wrote the history books, or they retroactively manipulated history. They retconned it to fit their present objectives. But I'm saying, aside from the retro manipulation and debates over what happened, they are proactively creating history. It's not a conspiracy theory, it's a fact. And I can demonstrate it quite simply. If there's even one fake event that you can point to that got a pass, that became part of our consensus worldview, we'll just say all the fake shootings, for example. Well, every one of these fake shootings has something in common. And what is that? They're planned in advance. Could be a week, could be a month, could be 10 years. Doesn't matter. The fact they're planned in advance means proactively pre-scripted events. These pre-scripted events are proactively planned, coordinated, and inserted into our historic timeline. So the fake news is actually putting stuff into history, our timeline. That's why I call it history bending. History bending is real. It doesn't exist from the mainstream perspective because they only can see coincidences. They don't understand the bigger picture, and truthers can't see it either. Because truthers are triggered. They're fighting the info war, and we're telling them the war's already been lost. And that might be the reason why a lot of truthers are not willing to have the paradigm shift and join the off-world stage. Because the off-world stage is a position of conscientious objectors, inactivists. We're not activists here. We're outside the political horseshoe. So we're inactivists, we're conscientious objectors to the Psy War, and we're not in the political horseshoe. If you're still fighting this Psy War, if you're still like, I'm going to fight the system, I'm going to get these Pentagon generals hanged at Guantanamo, they got you. Because the whole point of it is this: war is peace. 1984, war is peace. If you're in a state of mind war, if you're in the MSM, you're a target of this successful psychological warfare campaign. And if you're still in a state of Psy War personally, if you still think you're fighting the system, then you're a mind war casualty, in my opinion. It's irrational. And let's say you could convince 15 or 20,000 people to agree with you that we have to become anti this agenda and fight it. Well, those people are all in the same closed system. It's analogous to trying to get all the patients at an asylum to overthrow it and take over. Even if they had the numbers and they could overthrow the orderlies, mentally, they cannot take over. They're not in a position, mentally speaking, to handle the obligations, the duties of running the asylum. And you're just looking at essentially a massive open air asylum when it comes to attempting to organize people. Another point that I make is that we do not take any anti-positions. So if you're anti-geoengineering, you look like Greta to me. Might as well grow some pigtails. Because if you're anti-geoengineering, you are the equivalent of a climate change activist. I saw this. There's this guy goes by, he changed his name, I think, and he grew a beard. He used to call himself the millionaire flat earther. And now he's pushing this new thing called climate trails. And I said this for some time. I said, climate change versus chemtrails is a Hegelian dialectic strategy, meaning both anti-engineering and climate change activists both agree that Gaia is under attack by man. They both agree on that. Their only point of contention is that the climate change people blame capitalism and the anti-geoengineering people blame government, blame the state. But they both agree it's happening. Well, now you have this merger where, since chemtrails have been debunked and everyone thinks it's a clown show, now they're calling it climate trails to give it more gravitas. But climate trails, chemtrails is a programmed belief for the right. Chemtrails is a programmed belief for the left. Yeah, Hibbler Productions. Those individuals are not, if you ask me, I don't think they're arriving at these conclusions. I think they're just propagandists. Look who they're connected to. We can see through controlled op. So another point too, controlled opposition isn't just big loudmouths with huge platforms who've been planted there to steer our opinions. No, the controlled opposition also consists of every individual subscriber to these worldviews. So if you are alt media, you're controlled opposition. To what? Well, it's a duopoly. You're being triangulated. So Big Brother is triangulating you. That's why you have this bifurcation in every single event. And this is, down the line. But this is a duopoly. It's got one objective, and it's just amazingly successful. But let me get back to the main point, though. The main point was this: it's pointless to debate those with settled opinions. If you're alt media or your mainstream media, your opinions are fixed. They're not your original opinions. At some point, you have to admit this about any event. If your event is contained in one of these boxes, like, oh, I'm pretty sure Charlie Kirk was killed by a Chinese space laser. Okay, well, that's an alt media proposition. Oh no, he was killed by Trump and Erica Kirk because he was taken out so Israel could take over TPUSA, the most, I guess, impactful political action group out there. Well, that's alt media. Mainstream is Tyler Robinson did it. So these opinions are not original. There's no original research going on in these areas. It's all just propaganda dissemination on a timeline. Candace Owens isn't steadfastly researching. She's not Sherlock Holmes walking around that university with the magnifying glass trying to figure out who did it. She's not actually doing that. No, she's on a timeline. She's dropping talking points. There's a reason why she's the number one podcaster. It's not because she's gone out and done some fact finding and she found some stuff because she's a sleuth all of a sudden. No, the thing is, she's a propagandist, and she has been put there to maintain the integrity of this system. They need the alt media just as they need the mainstream. It's a closed system, but it's split down the middle, and it's always going to be divided. They need you to have chemtrail believers. They need to have climate change believers. They need that dialectic. They need that tug of war. And this is what I think Orwell meant when he says war is peace, because the mind war has pacified us. That's why I say it's useless to fight the system, at least from within it. You cannot effectively oppose it from within. It's like Truman in the Truman Show. You got to get off the stage. And that's why I coined the term off-world stage. So if you're off-world stage, the main difference is your perspective now includes news bending, history bending, which is long-term effects of news fakery, and the recognition of the world stage, which is a model, and how this model is built upon a lot of manipulated media. Additionally, we have awareness about special effects, about how psyops are accomplished, and we have plenty of what I call hoax indicators that we've assembled over time. Like, what would indicate this thing is a hoax? Well, drills. We just watched it on Netflix 5 minutes ago. Crisis actors with wildly erratic testimony that doesn't match the event. Immediately implementable political agendas. Press conferences 10 minutes later where, this is Scooby-Doo justice, where in the duration of one news report, you find out who did it, why, you read their manifesto, they arrested the guy or he killed himself, or he's on death row. The media is judge, jury, executioner. And before the end of the day, you know the whole story. You formed your opinion. You hate half your relatives because their opinion's different. But they get it all done in one episode. Like, now we're going to find out who the bad guy really is. Thank you, Thirst for Truth, for the generous support of the IPS think tank. Without that support, we would not be able to continue this research. And what we're doing here is research-oriented, empirical research. When I say that predictive programming, concurrent programming, and drills that go along with media are a pattern, a reoccurring theme, and are as such are predictable, it's based on research. When I saw Charlie Kirk's neck spout, first thing I thought was grotesque. It looks real. That's sick. I had no reason to immediately think it was fake, but I said, if it's fake, there's going to be a bunch of these hoax indicators, including predictive or concurrent content. And I said this before Snake Eyes was noticed. Before. That's what I'm saying. This model is predictive. It has predictive capability. You can extrapolate from what's in the media and determine what direction is it going based on what they're programming into people. But you can also, by looking at this as a model, you can recognize standard hoax indicators, templates that have been implemented. So I should not have known that there's going to be some significant predictive content for this event. How did I know that? I'm not psychic. It's because we have established a model here. So not only did we predict Snake Eyes, or that there would be a Snake Eyes, which has been widely commented on, it's not just us, but we also picked up on Tempest, which came out the same day and had even more connections. Then we find out about Heads of State. Then we find out about Emerson Drive. Then we see the Thought Crimes Podcast 33. Then we see, in addition to this, Erica Kirk, her continued actions as they mirror the Tempest. Then we find these strange connections between Snake Eyes, actress, next to Charlie Kirkland, and the Heads of State, Vice President Kirk, which then ties in to Erica Kirk and J.D. Vance's love affair and a lot of the rhetoric about her becoming a future VP. But what we're talking about, I could add in 20 other things. I could add in Americana, the significance there. I could add in Ryan Routh trying to stab himself in the same part of the neck, the significance there. We could talk about the JRE podcast, Joe Rogan Experience, with Charlie Sheen joking about getting sniped before they talk about Charlie Kirk. So we have an entire litany here of concurrent events or podcast movies. Roger Stone, for example, he's like, oh, that's too bad CK just died because he just called me and he wanted to do a podcast about the JFK assassination. And now we have the real-time comparisons of Erica Kirk to Jackie Kennedy. And the list is just blown up. And these aren't cherry-picked. These are things that were, in a very coordinated way, synchronized with the event. Now, all of this is just to say that if the event were real, none of this stuff would have also have occurred. That's not how reality works. Reality does not follow Netflix. PSYOPs do. PSYOPs imitate Netflix. If you look at news reportage about things like the Louvre being burglared, somebody stole the crown jewels, you know, that one there, we talked about it, probably fake. We'll see. And what did we see? Well, it turns out on Netflix, there was a show called Lupin where Marie Antoinette's necklace gets stolen. So then we're like, okay, yet another example of Planet Netflix at work, of a fake event or suspected fake event that had a disproportionate amount of attention that happens to be mirrored by Netflix. So that alone, you could say, oh, that's just a coincidence. Go touch grass, bro. Well, explain this then? Because there's thematic connections. There's themes that we're seeing at work here. So the crown jewels being stolen occurs during the No Kings protests. Oh, that's weird. And if you kind of read the storyline here, the subtext, and then in Lupin, they steal Marie Antoinette's necklace. What's the significance there? She lost her head in a No Kings protest. Multiple points of alignment. Like when I said Ryan Ralph tried to stab himself in the neck, he tried to kirk himself, he was going to squib all over the courtroom. If you look at the courtroom drawing, he was poking himself in the exact same spot where Charlie Kirk got shot. And of course, this was the Trump shooter, the would-be Trump shooter. So you already have the assassination connection. Then you have the point on the neck connection. You have the martyr connection. I mean, there's some significant overlaps here. And we haven't even seen the end of it. But my point was, I said, if the Kirk thing is fake, we're going to see a lot of this stuff. And what did we see? What have we seen? NDB says, but everything's a coincidence. Right, exactly. Thank you very much again for the support. They lie, we see. The 9/11. Armin Ross says, you know what might be funny one day, AF, in the future, if all movies and series ever are fed into a single Netflix service enhanced by AI to retroactively generate changes. Yeah. You know, you said ME vindication. Yeah, the Mandela effect is actually part of the standard operating procedure for the mainstream media. And I'll explain. Jacques says Nancy Pelosi breaking a crown. Yes, there was all kinds of crown stuff. But yeah, the crown jewels being stolen during No Kings, Marie Antoinette in the fictional version having her necklace stolen. And she was already in our context, Marie Antoinette, for a couple of reasons. Now, is she the one that said, let them eat cake? Well, anyway, she was there shown at the beginning of the Paris Olympics with a severed head. I saw this, somebody cross-reference that for me. Who said, let them eat cake? Because Trump is out there, lavish parties, Caligula, gold-plated bathrooms, carpeted bathrooms, knocking down parts of the White House, rebuilding it. And meanwhile, they're cutting food stamps for 42 million. So just the optics of it are absolutely terrible, but I think they're engineered to be this way. Like, it's all engineered. The Erica Kirk, J.D. Vance, leather pants fiasco, 100% scripted to look shady, scripted to make her look like a Jezebel witch who probably had something to do with infiltrating the good guy's life, Charlie, in order to get him taken out so she could become J.D. Vance's VP and TPUSA could be handed over to Israel. That's the subtext of the conspiracy theory in which Erica Kirk is a star. That's what Candace Owens implies and denies saying, but that is her implication. So the Mandela effect is technically the misinformation effect. And the misinformation effect is what happens when you recall something and your recollection is affected by your present context because your memories are always malleable. So the misinformation effect is how your memories are altered by what you're experiencing when they are recalled. That's why the Mandela effect people are not lying. The Mandela effect people legitimately believe that they saw fill in the blank Mandela effect happen, but they didn't actually see it. What happened is when they were queried about it, hey, do you remember A or B? Their imagination was prompted, and this imagined version of it gets filed with the memory. That's the misinformation effect. So the Mandela effect is actually a weaponized misinformation effect. Can we mess with this body of people and screw with their memories? And the answer is yes. The answer is 100% yes. So if you're Mandela affected and you believe that Kit Kat used to have a hyphen in it, or that the Ford logo used to have a swirly, or that Fruit Loops was spelled with the UI, like if you believe these things, as meaningful as they are, you only believe it because your memories were actually altered. So now how does the media do this? The way they employ the misinformation effect is whenever you have, and I think they do it proactively, So here's another explanation for predictive programming. So predictive, people ask, why do they do it? I call it like product placement for future events. I refer to it as foreshadowing, which is just good writing. But it's also to set you up for something. It's about suggestibility, because if they plant something into your frame of reference that wasn't there before, it can influence your future choices. Your future decisions are now going to be somewhat tampered with. And I brought up this psychologist who had this poster made up of Warner Brother characters at a Disney theme park, just on the wall. And she would ask people, have you been to Disneyland? Yes. Did you see Bugs Bunny? Yes. Well, Bugs Bunny's not there, but people would describe Bugs Bunny at Disneyland. And she said that's how easy it is to screw with somebody's memory, because when they recall Disneyland, it's also being done in the context of a room with some Warner Brothers misinformation. That's the misinformation effect, real time, working on normal people, just regular people. So the predictive programming, what it could be doing is they are planting these fictional versions of things into your memory. So you have a memory of a movie. You have a memory of the scenes. You've seen things before they happen on the world stage, if you've seen them in the movies. So for example, in 2010 Machete, Robert De Niro's character, Senator McLaughlin, is on this anti-immigrant rant and he's shot while he's at the podium. Assassination attempt. 30 minutes after Butler, there were people flooding that video clip. Like, oh, this was Trump's point of view 30 minutes ago. So like, you're telling me that these people had this terrible movie stored in their memory for instant recall at a similar event 14 years later? Yes, that's it. So the predictive programming actually did inform their perceptions of the event. And then what's more, when you remember something, your recollection of the event you saw on the news is going to be filed in the same mental storage cabinet as all this movie content. So all this movie content could quite literally be programming you to be susceptible to the misinformation effect, to tamper with your recollection of things as they happen. As you experience them, they're going to be influenced, and then after the fact, they'll be tampered with. Armin says, well, there's a couple things here. Jock says, a theory that deja vu is when the subconscious perceives an event before the conscious mind, or the subconscious before the conscious mind. So the conscious mind remembers it as it perceives it. It might be Mandela related. Yeah, there must be something to that, because we're talking about cognitive dissonance here. When somebody says, hey, what you thought was A your entire life was actually B. Okay, that very proposition is actually challenging their perceptions. They're saying your perceptions were wrong. That's gaslighting. When you say you can't trust your perceptions, trust me. So they instill some doubt. And this is also known as the interrogator bias. The interrogator bias can influence the person being questioned in their responses by making them doubt their perceptions. And if they can create enough doubt, they can insert something, an alternative version of the event, just like with the Mandela effect. Like, did you see this person running out of the store? Like, maybe they didn't see that exact person, but you instill some doubt. They see the person, they think about it, they imagine the person doing it. That's the misinformation effect at work. That's what's also called retroactive interference. The Mandela effect is totally a psyop and is run against truthers. I believe it's cognitive sabotage. Armin Ross says, the interesting thing about the God messaging through Mandela effect stance is the idea that God would communicate with the chosen by changing brands, packages, and blockbuster movies. Yeah, that's another point too, because every Mandela effect is technically a miracle. I even called it in the debunk book I put out, I called it the miracle effect, because people want to believe in miracles. If you've experienced a Mandela effect, you've experienced a miracle. Let's not shortchange it. Basically, You have seen through the illusion of the material world. You have directly experienced it. It's a miracle. It's a divine. It's a message from the divine in that sense. And they have spiritualized it. When I debunked this thing, so many people were mad at me about it because they thought they found evidence of God or something higher than man that was controlling things, that they were insiders to it and they were jumping timelines. I mean, I get it. 1 minute you're a time traveler jumping universes, and the next minute I'm like, no, actually somebody screwed with your mind. Well, they called me the God blocker. Like I stopped them from finding God. No, I actually saved you a lot of time on a false religious paradigm. You should be thanking me. Not one Mandela person has thanked me for fixing them, for curing them. I cured your Mandela effect, and you're not going to thank me for it. So many potential chemtrail lung patients have stopped believing in chemtrails, yet they haven't thanked me for that, or us. Because these beliefs are harmful. If you believe in chemtrails, you could psychosomatically have an effect like chemtrail lung. JT33 says, my Hanes underwear had a cornucopia, but everyone thinks it was Fruit of the Loom. I didn't know that Hanes, I don't know. I'd have to look. Another problem is this. A lot of the Mandela effect proponents have used Photoshop to create mock-ups of all their favorite effects. So now you search online and you're likely to find the fake version. One of my favorite ones is Chick-fil-A. So Chick-fil-A, people say that Chick-fil-A didn't used to have a K on it, and the K got magically added. So I was trying to figure this one out. Like, how do you get this one wrong? Is it Chick-fil-A or Chic-fil-A? Like, why the K? How did the K get added? Or how did people not see the K? So I went over there and I got some crisscross fries, and it turns out if you get a box of fries, the CHIC fits on the front. The K is on the other side of the box. So there's a good chance that you never saw the K. I mean, how hard are you looking at your fast food wrappers anyway? So your memories might legitimately only be CHIC. That might be your legitimate memory. It's a misremembering. It's a misconception. And being a misconception doesn't make it a reality shattering, paradigm shifting revelation from a simulation god. No, it means that you just didn't look at the side of your French fry wrapper. But that's not as sexy as the Mandela effect. Now, the evidence for the Mandela effect, at least they have something. At least they have some kind of evidence that they brought forward that you can debate against, even though it's been debunked. But at least they brought their evidence forward. So I asked, what's the evidence for simulation theory or any simulation? And here's a list. Here's a paper, list all the evidences. They actually don't have any. What is your evidence for in a simulation? The evidence used to be Simpsons, predictive programming, any kind of predictive programming. Luigi Mangione was seen by some as an evidence that we live in a simulation because he was, I think something about, there was a Mario Brothers game that came out, a ghost gun in the hands of the Luigi character. Luigi used a ghost gun. So the same types of coincidences that we always point out have always been lumped in by many as simulation evidences. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of the simulation people have had problems with me, is because their whole belief system, like Mandela effect, was based on some misconceptions about what this information actually meant. So we actually have done away with that. It was never a theory anyway. And it was too heavily promoted by Elon Musk and Joe Rogan for me to think it's legitimate. But if you want to take spiritual advice from Joe Rogan and Elon Musk, be my guest. But there's a reason why they want you to think nothing is real. Because if you think nothing is real, then what is fake news? If reality's fake, who cares about the news? Like, oh, nobody died at this event. Well, maybe tomorrow 30 people will have died. And the next day, it'll go back to the fake version. Nothing is real. Your perceptions are invalid. You just need to go ahead and rely upon your mainstream trusted source to tell you what's going on, because you can't tell yourself what's going on. That's what they want. They need us to be dependent on their pundits. None of these things affect us. That's all cognitive sabotage. That's all highly destructive misinformation for people who are trapped in the duopoly. Your mainstream and your alt media friends are in a controlled paradigm, the result of a very successful psychological warfare campaign. They've already been subdued. The system has already won. You can't fight it. It's incontestable. You certainly can't fight it if you're in their system. The only people in any position to launch a valid criticism against it are off-world stage. And how many of us are there? Gabriel's YouTube says, I always thought Chick-fil-A was a Chick-fil-A without the C. I've used that spelling even last month texting a family. Glad I tuned in because I need to learn to... Yeah, and it's understandable. It's a common misconception. And there's also this hubris that you get from the Mandela effect, like the word dilemma. How do you spell dilemma? How many L's is it? Because some will say there's one L, there's two L's. Well, the fact of it is, none of us had perfect spelling. Unless you were a spelling bee champ, misspelling is a huge part of the process of learning. We misspell, we learn grammar. We have to continually improve because it's a complicated thing and there's a lot of error that goes on. That's why they invented red pencils. So when you say, I remember the word is spelled this way, but they say it's this way, the dictionaries are wrong. The dictionaries changed. It's like, well, what's more likely, Occam's razor? That you had a misspelling, or that all the dictionaries in the world changed and you've been right the whole time. So I'm right and 8 billion people are wrong. Andrea says, 2 lyrics from Strawberry Fields, let me take you down because I'm going to, nothing is real, pretty much describes the news, movies, songs, etc. Dark Ghost Wind says, BBC CEO got fired for twisting coverage about Trump on January 6th. And that's not even a win. Because both Trump's side and the BBC CEO agree January 6th was real. But so here's another example of the 3 perspectives. So the mainstream says J6 was caused by Trump and his MAGA mob to stop the certification of the election. Alternative media says it was done by Ray Epps, some Fed, who told everybody to run into the castle. So their view is that it was instigated by Feds. And they come out with this new info. Like every 3rd person there was a Fed. The Feds are responsible. So they both agree it happened, but one says the government caused it. The other one says Trump caused it. But it's another one of these perfect dialectics where they both agree it happened. They just disagree on the cause. That's the duopoly at work. What is our perspective? Our perspective is that it was not instigated. It was not stimulated. It was simulated. So again, you got stimulated as in instigated or simulated. If you still think these events are stimulated, that they're real, but they were provoked, yeah, you're in the mainstream box. If you can recognize that they were simulated, then you would be off-world stage. And these things matter in the context of the forest of fakery, because if January 6th was fake, then all of our conjecture about Butler makes even more sense. Because Donald Trump participated in January 6th. Do you think he didn't know what was going on? Do you think he was an innocent bystander in this? So then Butler happens. Well, in Butler, Trump was the magician in that show. He performed a trick which involved his participation, which means Trump was part of a psyop. So if Trump was part of a psyop, like an actor in it, so if you still follow him, you know you're following a world stage magician, a crisis actor. I mean, imagine that. A deceiver going out to his voters with a big, with a big pad on the side of his ear. It looks like the same Kleenex. It looks like the same thing that Erica Kirk's wiping her eye with. He's got this big bandage on his ear, though, like he's playing a victim, right? Well, what does that mean? Think about the bigger picture. If he faked Butler, then was he really an enemy of the state and they had to take him out? Well, no, it means that January 6th was fake. Like these things are conclusive. He didn't just join the PSYOP entertainment complex. So then what does Butler and J6 say about Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA? Because these things are all interrelated. Who got Trump into office? Who's ground game? TP USA, that's the story. Like these are all part of the same fictional universe. This is the forest of fakery. So the error in looking at any event in isolation is that you lack sufficient context. So there's some who will say, well, I don't know if that plane crash was connected to 9/11. What do you mean? Like we pointed out a dozen plus coincidences in media and in politics that all point to that, including the present FAA lockdowns of these planes being grounded. Like there's this entire body of stuff that we're pointing at, suggesting this thing was fake. But then people will say, well, how did they fake it? Like, does the media fake stuff like that? It's like, what are you talking about? Does the media fake stuff like that? They did January 6th. They did 9/11. They did COVID. They did Butler. They did Charlie Kirk. You don't think they could do another run-of-the-mill plane crash? Dark Ghost Wind says, I do feel for truthers, though. Yeah, honestly, you're better off being a normie. You're better off in Normieville than Woketown. Normieville is happy. It's blissful. Woketown is like a bunch of red pill addicts, people hitting the Q pipe, Mentanol addicts everywhere. It's a mess. Woketown is full of grifters and carnival barkers. And then you see people on these well-paved rabbit trails following demagogues, goggling up breadcrumbs, thinking they're awake. I mean, that's delusion. Yeah, Woketown is bad because they're triggered. They're mad. They're full of rage. Their emotions are being manipulated by string pullers. They're being puppeteered. If you stare at the black monolith and you feel your pulse raise up and you start getting angry and mad, they're controlling your mind. Nobody controls my mind. And we are the uncontrolled opposition. Truthers are controlled opposition. Ryler says, Woketown is full of wannabe alpha males and women haters. Right, that's true. No. Trutherville is. Woketown is the left-wing one, but I know what you mean. So on the left, you have Woketown, because Woketown on the left is toxic femininity. Trutherville, which is woke right, is toxic masculinity. That's why you have people like these like rapists or alleged rapists who are put on platforms like Andrew Tate and what's the other guy, Russell Brand. You get these characters who are put out there as womanizers. You have all the woke right types, the J-pill types, like even recently, Nick Fuentes and others talking about lowering the age of consent. Well, that's because they're anti-feminist and they think that feminism has taken women out of the kitchen and put them into colleges and universities so they could subvert the American family. She says deranged leftists do not look well adjusted. Well, exactly. The deranged leftists, the woke, have a mirror in the woke right. And the woke right is the political equivalent of the woke left. So that's, again, this is on the political horseshoe, but they're mirrored. But the red pill is a subset of woke right. So red pill people are having a nightmare. Blue pill are dreamers, red pill, nightmare. They're having nightmares. Their version of the world is much scarier. So again, it's significant here that red pill is a subset of woke right because ultimately it has the same enemies or the same scapegoat, but they just refer to them as different things. So woke right will say it's Israel. Red pill people will say it's the Rothschilds, it's the bankers, it's the globalists, it's the reptilians. They'll say anything but Israel. And that's because red pill is marketed to a wider audience who would not be as receptive to ethnic hatred. They save that until the very end. I used to get a lot of these, we call them J pill. The J pill people would come in my chat and they'd say, when you guys are done with these conspiracies, let's talk about who's really doing it. Like they had the ultimate truth. Well, the ultimate truth of blame Israel is mirrored with Woketown, where they blame systemic racism and whiteness. So what is it? Is it whiteness that runs the world, or is it Jewishness? See, they both agree somebody's ruling the world and oppressing them. The other side of being woke is the recognition of this dynamic of oppressor and oppressed. And then here's one more. I mean, this is just an ugly truth here that you have to kind of reconcile with if you're going to stay in alt media, is that red pill is actually the J pill, just covered in red. It's euphemistic. So ultimately, if you are a red pillar, you're just chasing after Israel. Why do you think Candace Owens, Ian Carroll, Owen Schroyer, and every other conspiracy theorist has said Israel killed Charlie Kirk? Now, they won't say it directly. Yeah, Amin Far says the woke right uses manosphere. Yeah, that's the mirror. So woke left, woke right, toxic femininity, toxic masculinity. I noticed this pretty strong. It was pretty pronounced back when the Roe v. Wade was overturned. And there's a couple of things here. This is when I coined the term concurrent programming. Roe v. Wade is overturned. The feminists are marching because, of course, the right to abortion has been threatened. So I'm like, okay, this is boring. Let me watch the new Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon. Opening episode, House of the Dragon, at the same time of these pro-abortion marches, you had the queen, the most powerful woman in the kingdom, dying in childbirth because they needed the male heir. So they barbarically kill her in a totally botched delivery. She bleeds out. It's totally grotesque and barbaric. And I said, wait a minute here. We have the Roe v. Wade leak and the subsequent marches happening. And then it's mirrored in a grotesque way on the most popular show on HBO, where we're given graphic visuals of what will happen as a result of Roe v. Wade overturning. And I said, wait a minute, this means that the leak was intentionally planned. It means that this TV show would have been scheduled to coincide with that, which is not new. We saw that happen with like Waco American Apocalypse kicking off when Trump kicks off his campaign in Waco. But at this time, I saw the marching, and I noticed that there was another dialectic here having to do with the guns and needles. How the right favors guns, the left favors needles. Guns are active, masculine. Needles require passivity because you're the recipient of the poke. And I noticed this guns versus needles thing. But I also noticed here that the toxic feminists, or the left, the woke left, they want to grab your guns. They want to grab your guns. So think about this from a Freudian perspective. And again, Netflix, first CEO, co-founder, related to Freud and Edward Bernays. So the feminists want to grab the guns. The left wants to grab the guns, which is emasculating. It's very emasculating. They're taking away your power, your ability to defend your home, your family, your house. And the gun symbolically, it's like they're basically emasculating you, castrating you. But then what do the toxic males want to do? They want to reduce the age of consent, deny abortion, and keep you pregnant barefoot in the kitchen, take away your right to vote. So they want to grab your wombs. So one side wants to grab your guns, the other side wants to grab your wombs. So if you look at them as polarized in this way, it makes perfect sense. Tominoid3 says they used a dragon for abortion later. Oh, I didn't finish the whole show. I'll have to. Riley says, back in the day, everybody was on the same page, watching the same TV, same news for the most part before the internet. But now everybody watches phones for their shows. So by having concurrent programming at the same time as the news, it keeps people more on the same page like they used to be. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, that does make sense. Because if news is very fragmented, scattered, decentralized, they need to keep everybody on the same sheet as far as their opinions, their reactions. Their visceral responses, I think, are tapped into with the entertainment. But it does make sense. Total media ecosystem saturation. And we see this I call it concurrent, I call it, yeah, I think I called it concerted messaging. Concerted messaging refers to memes, ideas, people, or situations that are everywhere at once, so you can't get away from it. And it's like every available platform is used for it. I mean, think about the Charlie Kirk thing. You had the event itself, you had the Hulu movie version of it, witnessed by a large number of people. Number one show in Japan, Taiwan, Turkey. It was big in Canada. I mean, we're talking like this top show produced by Disney, I think. Disney, Hulu's The Tempest. But no matter where you go, you would have seen that. And this is not an uncommon thing. Or you didn't watch the news about the Uvalde shooting, but you watched the season premiere of Stranger Things, a bunch of dead kids at the beginning, and a note at the beginning. By the way, this might offend you if you watch the news. And then you have the show FBI season finale, where there's a school shooter and they don't have a warrant and he's going to go shoot up the school. So some FBI agent goes against protocol, says, screw the warrant, and he stops the kid, saves lives. Well, how did Uvalde end? They had an off-duty Border Patrol guy do the job because the police wouldn't. In fact, they actually canceled FBI season finale because it was so close to the storyline. Andrea says, the phrase being on the same page came from when everyone got the papers, the printing press. It started in the 1400s. Yeah, I've considered this too, that the movable type press represented such a disruption to the power structure, and knowledge monopolies are what we're really talking about here. And that's fundamentally it. It's a knowledge monopoly. And we're dealing with a world view monopoly. Who has the power to shape our worldview? Like who writes history? We're supposed to think it's this collective creation, objectively reported on. We debate stuff, but ultimately it's what we're all experiencing. No, actually, it's the result of a highly curated worldview. It's very centralized. And we can demonstrate this, and we can demonstrate how they create the echo chambers by examining, not incredulously dismissing, but I mean skeptically examining the evidence that we put forth. So when we look at all the stuff leading up to the Charlie Kirk event, you know, everybody noticed snake eyes. Nobody noticed anything else. We looked at everything. Every single thing that led up to it had the same elements, common denominators: a storm, September 10th, Tyler as the shooter or the executioner, the name Tyler, of course, the name Charlie Kirk thrown in there, and the neck wound with specificity, as in on the left side of the neck. So you look at these elements here: the neck, the name of the victim, the name of the shooter, the date, and the storm. These elements are reflected in the rest of it. And I mentioned the movies and stuff, but we haven't even really got into the full characterization of Erica Kirk and how she ties into all these other movies. Like the woman on the world stage, Erica Kirk, has direct correlations to the actress from Snake Eyes in her role in the movie, the actress in Snake Eyes in her role in Heads of State. And of course, her Emerson Drive video foreshadowed the event. And then her corresponding character in The Tempest, the widow, takes over the youth Republicans after her husband's assassination, which is just like Charlie Kirk's. I mean, we've gone through this a million times. And I'm just pointing out here that now we're at the point where we're examining every instance of these overlaps between entertainment and news. And we're looking for the common denominators and tracing it back. And what is the earliest example of media foreshadowing an event? That contains the above common denominators. And that's why I arrive at Snake Eyes gives us an indication of how far back in advance they planned the assassination, the fake assassination. That's why I say it's a paradigm shift. It's not a paradigm shift to say news is fake. That's common sense. It's a paradigm shift when you recognize that the fake events are scheduled decades in advance, 30 years. Yeah, and the storyline that Charlie was about to expose Israel, or he was about to get the Epstein files put out there, that talking point is put out there for the alt media, for the alternative thinkers. It's the controlled opposition to the mainstream. It keeps you in their funny farm. It keeps you in their Truman Show. So to get back to the starting point, is there a point to debating people with settled opinions? No. If you can ask them a question and they give you the Wikipedia-friendly answer, if they default to the MSM answer, if they sound like ChatGPT informed their opinion, then based on their perspective, they can't actually arrive at a point of agreement with you because they're not willing to, able to, or capable of addressing news bending, history bending, and the fact that we live in a worldview that has been created for us. So a lot of people recognize that we have our perspectives, our opinions, but we live in a model. And the model is the objective world with our agreed upon history and a bunch of fake stuff added into it. That's the model. When we look at the stuff, we're not saying the world's fake, reality's fake. No, we're saying this stuff is fake. So if you separate the fakery, you live in a world that's a bit calmer. Fewer God constructs, fewer threats, fewer atrocities. So our perspective, the subtractive view, just removes all the BS. That's why I'm not here overreacting. That's why I didn't celebrate the death of Dick Cheney. That's why I didn't celebrate the death of Charlie Kirk, because I'm not a bloodthirsty media fundamentalist that wishes for death because of what the little black boxes told me. Like, I'm not complicit in murder. I don't applaud murder. Like, honestly, a lot of these media people are like essentially bloodthirsty religious fanatics. Did you see how many people wore Charlie Kirk costumes for Halloween? I'm like, that's crazy. Like, imagine dressing up your kids as like school shooting victims. And then you have like one of your kids with a gun. It's like the left would get pissed. They'd say, you can't do that. I guess we can. Amin Farr says the MSM's plus lot, woke right lot, watch too much TV, media, radio, podcasters than normal. If they boast they don't watch normal TV. Yeah, I hear that too. That's why I don't say because I saw it on TV. I say because it was broadcast to you in your black monolith device. Because if you say you just believe what you saw on TV, they'll say I don't watch TV. Because you used to be able to say I don't watch TV as a posture, like, oh, I'm not easily influenced. Like, that doesn't work anymore because nobody watches TV. I mean, very few. That's not what we mean when we say watched. And also the implication is that you watch TV, it's passive. And if you have a million channels to choose from, you're exercising choice. Well, now you're not just a passive news consumer, right? No, I'm not a passive news consumer because I chose to listen to this podcast, that podcast, and I chose that news platform. And because I made these choices out of 1,000 options, I'm a free thinker. No, because all of your options are on one or the other side of the controlled world stage. Doesn't matter how many podcasts you listen to, if all of them have the same point of view. So this is not active. They're not active consumers of media. It's an illusion of choice. It's passive. They're passive receptacles for propaganda garbage. Your mind is a trash can for Big Brother. And what we're pointing out is that the only way you can be an active consumer of news is if you suspend judgment, gain additional facts, and you move from credulity into skepticism. Credulity is pretty much the best way to describe it. People believe their sources, auto believers, as we describe them. So I'm not saying automatically disbelieve, because you don't have enough information automatically. You need some time, therefore skepticism. But you should automatically think about whether or not it's fake. It should be on your mind. Dark Ghost Win says most of the Twitter feed is psyops and thinly veiled brainwashing. Yes. Twitter, X, whatever. X is like X say free speech. No, X is just like, okay, X is meant to oppose the woke mind virus. That's Elon Musk's idea. Like, I had to take it over because the woke mind virus. The problem is that they got rid of the woke mind virus on Twitter and they banished it to Blue Sky. But then they replaced it with the woke right mind virus. You ever heard of the woke right mind virus? I mentioned it to Musk, but he never responds to any of my tweets. The woke right mind virus is just as big, just as virulent as the woke left mind virus. So there is no woke mind virus. There's a woke left mind virus, and there's a woke right mind virus. They're competing viruses, trying to infect as many of the MAIDS patients out there. And if you're on the world stage, you're basically a MAIDS patient. And what is MAIDS? Mind AIDS. It means your mental immune system has been compromised. And if you're a truther and you fall for any of their orthodox trutherisms, loaded with logical fallacies, well, every logical fallacy that you fall for is a vulnerability in your mental immune system. If you fall for loaded questions, then you can be infected with mind viruses quite easily. Infinite plane radio is mind war inoculation. It's like a vax for your mind. Tominoid says all new woke zero. So are we woke? No. I don't know what you call us. I mean, off-world stage perspective is really outside of their box of faux woke. They're not really awake. They're high. There's a difference. High on the red pill, Q-pipe, high on outrage, high on grievance, political violence. You'll never see an off-world stager advocate for political violence. Although you might hear us say things like, I can't wait till they nuke Seattle. But we see so knowing that it's going to be faked. Commenter says, powerful Mexican deity associated with Saturn, god over black mirrors and such, appears in paintings with the black mirror. Yeah, I've heard about this. Okay. I've heard about this. And that the black scrying mirror that John Dee used to communicate with angels or demons or whatever, it was supposedly from Mexico. By the way, speaking of demons, have you heard Tucker Carlson lately? He's like, I believe that demons can take physical form. Demons attacked me in my bed. I was bleeding all over the sheets. Like, he's still out there pushing that. And you have Candace Owens says demons are real. Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and Sam Altman kill children and sacrifice them to summon demons into Grok. So AI is demons summoned by sacrificing children. But Tucker Carlson has become very comfortable talking about physical demons. And now one of them got into his bed. Now, why are they doing this? Well, it's quite simple. If you look at the right-left split. And even recently, Marjorie Taylor Greene was out in the news for calling aliens fallen angels. Left-wing, progressivism, atheism, scientism, they don't believe in angels because that's archaic and laughable and medieval and ignorant, superstitious. But they believe in aliens. Right-wing doesn't believe in aliens. They believe that aliens are likely demons. It's one of these things where it's perfectly split down the middle. The further right you go, the more likely you're going to believe that aliens are demons or a government scam, which is a talking point. The alien invasion is going to be fake according to all truthers. And then AI is demonic. That's a right far right position. If you're woke right, you don't have the traditional. You have the, you don't have the progressive of the traditional. So if you look at it as like trad wives, it's so funny. Trad versus progressive. The progressives believe in aliens. Traditional believes in angels. Traditional thinks that aliens are demons. Progressives think that angels are superstition. But anyway, they both agree in these glowing, shining beings from above that can come down and save us. They both believe that, but they just disagree on how you define them. So there's a parallel architecture, left and right, and the differences are nominal. They're just different descriptions for the same concepts. Trad right, oh, they laugh out loud at the climate change flood myth, how Noah is always telling us there's a flood coming. The National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, logo being the bird over the ocean, they laugh at that. But they believe in Noah from the Bible, whose symbol is the dove, because it brought the olive branch to tell them it's time to go back. So they believe in Noah's flood. Well, what causes Noah's flood? The sinful progressive values, their wickedness. What causes Noah's flood? Carbon footprint, pollution, CO2, the sins of the free market, the sins of the oppressive system of capitalism. So left blames right for the flood, right blames left for the flood. I've even seen some right-wingers saying that God sent the climate change to punish us. So one believes in the traditional concept of sin, as in wickedness, as defined in the religious systems. And the other side believes in sin, original sin even, as a carbon footprint, something you're born with, something you have to expiate, you have to work to mitigate. You both have to work to save the planet, to go green. To go green is to go ascetic, to avoid sin. So that, I would say that the left has a compatible sin construct. They also have a version of being saved by following the mainstream church. And that refers to the injectable Eucharist. And the ones on the right reject that because they're unsaved. So this modern paradigm that I'm describing, the world stage, is split down the middle in such a way that it cannot unite. It's designed not to. It's designed to be in two compartments. It's a duopoly. And if you're in the duopoly, there's no point in debating with you on any issue because you're going to be closed-minded by default. And I'm bringing this closed-minded thing up because somebody said, you should be closed-minded. I mean, you should be open-minded because you're closed-minded if you think that it can't just be all coincidence. And I'm like, no, the closed-minded default perspective is that these are only coincidences. It's in your system. Your closed system only has that one option. These are just coincidence. That's by default closed to new information. So we are the open-minded ones. That's why I say infinite plane radio, open phones for open minds, because this is off-world stage perspectives and it's inclusive of stuff that the closed-minded people cannot even consider. And they demonstrate they're closed-minded when they don't confront our evidence as anything more than a straw man. They engage ad hominem. And again, your straw man is inferior to our steel man arguments. And I steel man all the arguments on the world stage. We melt those things. We melt them down. make blue wrenches out of them. Meanwhile, burning straw men doesn't really inform you. It doesn't empower you in any way. It doesn't put you in an advantageous position over the other side. It's just a way of dismissing it without doing any real work. So I look forward to principled and informed debate in the future. I don't see it happening, but if it does, that'd be great. But it's not really useful to proactively try to debate them because their opinions are intransigent, they're belief based, and facts don't really matter to belief systems. And I guess that's one other point I could make, is that the world stage has a bunch of belief systems that would seem to be mutually exclusive, but they can coexist, like that bumper sticker. They coexist because none of them exit the parameters of the world stage. So you have all these competing belief systems. What they have in common, though, is that they are all secondhand information, a little bit of trust or faith. They're not really testable or tested. They're optional. And what we proffer here is not a belief system. It's not an alternative belief system. In fact, if anything, we foment a culture of disbelief. This is a culture of disbelief. We are non-believers. If that makes you want to stone us or hack our heads off, throw us off of buildings, or whatever else religious nutcases do, you only underscore what we're saying. Like you're in a global cult. Somebody said, "You guys are a cult." I'm like, "No, you're in the cult. This is more of an anti-cult. You guys are in an echo chamber." No, you are by definition in an echo chamber, and we demonstrate how effective of an echo chamber it is, and it influences billions. A think tank is not an echo chamber because we're constantly seeking new information, new sources, new points of view. An echo chamber only has one point of view, and everything has to reinforce it. Just to get that straight. Ryler says, the deities John D. talked to said not to worship Jesus, that the worship of Jesus made the Queen of Heaven sick. Yeah, I've checked out some of John D. and Edward Kelly in his writings. John D. coined the phrase British Empire. So he's not a nobody. He had something to do with the Gregorian calendar. He was a big advocate for it. He was the original 007, an astrologer, astronomer, astrologer. I think he was both. And then he, of course, had this magical system, which I think is really the basis for a lot of modern Western occultism, the basic ritual magic structure, you know, like the circle, the triangle, the black mirror, invocations. But the scrying mirror is identical to your cell phone, the black mirror. And there is this, I've actually looked into it. You can look into these grimoires. And if you wanted to summon a demon, I think you draw a circle like with chalk and a triangle and then in a circle around the circle. And I think your phone goes in that second circle. You got to have incense there. And you do this invocations. And supposedly the evoked spirit will show up in the mirror, in the reflection of the incense smoke. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm interested to see if anybody has. Anybody have any experience with goetic summoning? And what's crazy too is, what if that stuff is real? What if it's all true? What are we doing when we're emoting? Because a huge part of magical ritual is emotion. Like, in order to do magic, one has to have strong emotional output. There has to be a release. Like you have to be emotive. It's not something you can do if you're not motivated. You've got to have heavy emotion into it. It's why music, theater, and the visuals are part of ceremony. It's to bring about not the intellectual engagement, but the emotional aspect. And when people hold their phones, they're constantly emoting into their black mirrors. And so if I was a a Candace Owens listener, I might be inclined to think it's plausible that we're feeding demons all the time. And at some point, they're going to usurp our bodies by jumping out of the black mirrors and hijacking our minds. Anyway, this has been great. We'll talk about this and more later. I'm going to turn the 24/7 stream on in between live streams. And so you can go to the YouTube channel at Infinite Plane Radio or on X. It will be live on X. And every time I do this, I pick up a lot more subs and I get a lot more people getting into our Discord. You're going to see our numbers climbing. It's starting off small, but it's going to snowball. So we got the 24/7 stream started. Thanks everyone for the support. Thanks for all the new members. And if you just got a membership, I'm going to be putting up some content for members only. And check your front porch for an 18-inch titanium blue wrench. And again, we get these wrenches made from all the steel men that we melt down. And we've melted a lot of guardrails as well. We have a lot of material to work with. All right, I'll see you all later. Thanks again.